"I'll stay," Daniel said quietly, his voice steady despite the storm raging outside. "But I'm not sleeping on the sofa." The words hung between them like a challenge, like a confession, like something that could change everything. Olivia Bennett, billionaire CEO, his boss, untouchable, stood frozen in her kitchen doorway, eyes wide with surprise. Outside, lightning split the Portland sky. Inside, the silence stretched impossibly long. What happened next would shatter workplace boundaries, ignite dangerous rumors, and force two people from completely different worlds to choose between playing it safe and risking everything for something real. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Bennett Technologies' 15th floor buzzed with the kind of persistent hum that made late nights feel even longer. Daniel Harper rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the lines of code swimming across his dual monitors, each character blurring into the next like rain streaking down a windshield. 10:30 p.m. on a Thursday. Again. He should have been home 2 hours ago. Should have been reading Where the Wild Things Are to Lily, tucking her into bed, watching her drift off to sleep with her worn stuffed elephant clutched against her chest. Instead, he was debugging a server architecture problem that had first appeared at 4:15 that afternoon, right when he'd been packing his bag to leave. Daniel's phone sat face up beside his keyboard, the screen dark but somehow still accusing Mrs. Chen, his neighbor and emergency babysitter, had sent a gentle text at 8. "Lily's asleep. Take your time. We're fine." The words were kind, but they still felt like failure. Being a single father meant living in a constant state of calculated compromise. Every extra hour at the office was an hour stolen from his daughter. Every deadline met was a bedtime story missed. Every step forward in his career felt like a step away from the tiny apartment where a 6-year-old girl waited for him to come home. Daniel closed his eyes and allowed himself exactly 10 seconds of exhaustion. Then he opened them and went back to work. He didn't notice the storm until it announced itself with a crack of thunder so violent it rattled the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sound jolted him upright. He spun in his chair toward the glass wall that overlooked downtown Portland, and his breath caught. The city had vanished behind sheets of rain so thick they looked solid. Wind drove the water sideways against the building, each gust sounding like gravel thrown against metal. Lightning flickered somewhere inside the clouds. Not the clean, branching kind from movies, but the ugly, continuous strobing that turned the world negative, reversed, wrong. "Jesus," Daniel whispered. His phone buzzed. Another text from Mrs. Chen. "Storm's bad. Stay safe. Don't rush. Don't rush." Right. Like he had a choice. Daniel saved his work, shut down his computer, and grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair. The server issue wasn't solved, but it wasn't critical enough to risk driving in whatever apocalyptic mess was happening outside. Morning would have to be good enough. The office was nearly empty. The open-plan workspace that housed 40 engineers during business hours now felt cavernous and strange. All those desks with their darkened monitors looking like gravestones in the dim emergency lighting. Somewhere in the distance, a printer hummed to itself, spitting out pages no one would read. Daniel walked quickly toward the elevators, his footsteps echoing off the polished concrete floors. He was halfway across the room when he noticed light spilling from one of the corner offices. The big one with the view, the one with Olivia Bennett, CEO, etched in frosted glass beside the door. He slowed. It wasn't unusual for executives to work late. Bennett Technologies had been in the middle of a major acquisition for months, and Olivia Bennett had a reputation for being the first one in and the last one out. Still, something made Daniel pause. Maybe it was the quality of the silence, or the way the light from her office seemed too steady, too still. He told himself to keep walking. Whatever was happening in there wasn't his business. But then he heard it, a sound so quiet he almost missed it beneath the rumble of thunder. A sigh. Frustrated, exhausted, deeply human. Daniel hesitated for 3 full seconds. Then he knocked gently on the doorframe. "Mrs. Bennett, you okay?" The woman who looked up from behind the massive glass desk bore little resemblance to the polished, commanding figure who gave keynote speeches and appeared on the covers of business magazines. Her dark hair, usually swept into an elegant twist, hung loose around her shoulders. She'd kicked off her heels, and her suit jacket was draped across the back of her chair. She looked tired, young, approximately as done with this day as Daniel felt. "Mr. Harper?" Olivia blinked, clearly surprised to find anyone else still in the building. "I didn't realize anyone was still here." "Server issue," Daniel said, hovering awkwardly in the doorway. "Just finished up. I was heading out and saw your light on." "Ah." Olivia glanced at her own computer screen, then back at Daniel with something that might have been embarrassment. "I should probably do the same. I've been staring at the same contract amendment for 45 minutes, and I'm not convinced I could tell you what it says anymore." Lightning flashed, turning the windows into mirrors for a fraction of a second. Thunder followed immediately, close enough to feel in the chest. Olivia stood and walked to the window, arms crossed, staring out at the storm with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. "It's getting worse." "Yeah." Daniel joined her at the glass, maintaining a respectful distance. From 15 stories up, Portland looked like a city drowning. The streets were rivers. Traffic lights swayed in the wind. Trees bent at angles that seemed physically impossible. "I should go," Olivia said, but she didn't move. "My driver called an hour ago. His mother's in the hospital. Nothing serious, but he needed to leave. I told him to go, obviously. I was going to call a rideshare, but..." She held up her phone, showing a screen full of unavailable services and surge pricing notifications. Apparently everyone in Portland had the same idea. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time since he'd started working at Bennett Technologies 18 months ago. She was younger than he'd thought, mid-30s maybe. Beautiful in the way powerful women often were. Sharp-featured, self-possessed, intimidating. But right now, stranded in her own office building during a storm, she just looked like someone who needed help. "I can give you a ride," Daniel heard himself say. Olivia turned to face him, surprise evident in the slight widening of her eyes. "Oh, I couldn't possibly—" "It's not a problem," Daniel interrupted gently. "I'm already going out there. You live on the west side, right? I pass through that area anyway." This was a lie. Daniel lived in a modest apartment complex on the east side, nowhere near the expensive residential neighborhoods where CEOs lived. But the lie felt necessary, a way to offer help without making it feel like charity. Olivia studied him for a long moment. Daniel could almost see her calculating, weighing professional boundaries against practical necessity, pride against pragmatism. "Are you sure?" she finally asked. "Positive." "Then, thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate it." The use of his first name, not Mr. Harper, just Daniel, felt strangely intimate in the empty office. They rode the elevator down in comfortable silence. The lobby was deserted, the security guard's desk abandoned. Through the glass doors, the storm raged with undiminished fury. "This is going to be fun," Daniel muttered, pulling up the hood of his jacket. Olivia laughed, a real laugh, not the polished professional sound he'd heard in meetings. "At least we'll have a good story for Monday morning." They ran for Daniel's car, a 7-year-old Honda Civic with a child's car seat in the back and a collection of Lily's artwork taped to the rear windows. Daniel felt a flash of embarrassment as he unlocked it, acutely aware of how different it must be from whatever luxury vehicle Olivia usually rode in. But if she noticed or cared, she didn't show it. She just slid into the passenger seat with a grateful sigh, water dripping from her hair onto her shoulders. "Seatbelt," Daniel said automatically, then immediately felt stupid. She was a CEO, not a child, but Olivia just smiled and buckled up. "Force of habit?" "Sorry, my daughter. I say it about 1,000 times a day." "You have a daughter?" "Yeah, Lily. She's 6. Daniel started the engine, relieved when it turned over on the first try. "She's why I work late, trying to make sure she doesn't have to worry about things kids shouldn't worry about." He didn't know why he'd added that last part. It felt too personal, too revealing. But something about the darkness, the storm, the strangeness of having his CEO in his passenger seat made normal boundaries feel less important. "That must be hard," Olivia said quietly. "Balancing everything." "It is," Daniel admitted. He pulled out of the parking garage and into the maelstrom. "But she makes it worth it." The drive through Portland in the storm was like navigating an alien landscape. Familiar streets became unrecognizable. Intersections flooded to mid-tire depth. Tree branches littered the road like fallen soldiers. Daniel drove slowly, carefully, both hands on the wheel, hyper-aware of his precious cargo. They didn't talk much at first. The storm demanded too much concentration. But gradually, in the spaces between thunder and the rhythm of the windshield wipers, conversation began to emerge. "How long have you been at Bennett?" Olivia asked. "About a year and a half. I came from a startup that went under. This job literally saved me. I was 2 months away from having to pull Lily out of her preschool. I didn't know that." "Why would you?" Daniel smiled slightly. "I'm just one of about 300 engineers." "You're not just anything, Daniel. I've seen your work. The migration project you led last quarter was exceptional." Daniel felt heat rise to his cheeks. "Thank you. That means a lot." "I mean it. We need more people who think like you, people who care about the work, not just the paycheck." "Everyone needs the paycheck," Daniel said. "But yeah, I care about the work too." They lapsed into silence again. The storm seemed to be reaching some kind of crescendo, rain falling so hard it sounded like static, wind rocking the Civic with each gust. Daniel's GPS announced that they were approaching Olivia's neighborhood. The houses here were different from the cramped apartments of his side of town. Set back from the street, surrounded by old-growth trees glowing with warm light behind curtained windows. This was where people lived when they didn't have to choose between fixing the car and buying groceries. "It's the one on the right," Olivia said. "The Craftsman with the blue door." Daniel pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. The house was beautiful, 2 stories, probably built in the 20s, lovingly maintained. Light spilled from the windows, making the rain look like golden thread. "Thank you," Olivia said, turning to face him. "Really, I know this was out of your way." "It wasn't—" Daniel started to protest, but Olivia held up a hand. "Daniel, I know where you live. HR Files, remember? You drove 40 minutes in the wrong direction to help me. So thank you." Daniel felt caught, but not angry. "You're welcome." Olivia looked at the storm, then back at the house, then at Daniel. Something shifted in her expression, a decision being made. "This is going to sound crazy," she said, "but would you like to come in? Wait out the worst of it? Maybe have some coffee or something to eat?" Daniel's first instinct was to refuse. This was his boss. This was inappropriate. This crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. But then lightning flashed again, and thunder shook the car so hard he felt it in his bones. And he thought about driving back across the city in this mess, about the flooding streets and the reduced visibility and the very real possibility of an accident. He thought about Lily, waking up to find out her father had been hurt because he'd been too proud to accept shelter from a storm. "Coffee sounds great," Daniel said. They ran through the rain again, Olivia's heels clicking on the stone path. She fumbled with her keys, her hands were shaking, whether from cold or adrenaline Daniel couldn't tell. And then the door swung open and they tumbled inside, dripping and breathless and laughing. The interior of the house matched its exterior, warm, carefully designed, comfortable without being ostentatious. Hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, art that looked original rather than mass-produced. It felt lived in despite Olivia's demanding schedule. Throw blankets draped over furniture, books stacked on side tables, a pair of reading glasses abandoned on the coffee table. "Make yourself comfortable," Olivia said, shrugging out of her soaked jacket. "I'm going to change into something dry. The bathroom's down the hall if you need it, and feel free to raid the kitchen for towels." She disappeared up the stairs, leaving Daniel standing in her entryway, dripping onto the hardwood, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. He found towels in the kitchen, a bright modern space that managed to feel cozy despite its size. Restaurant-quality appliances, marble countertops, a window over the sink that probably overlooked a garden when it wasn't being pummeled by rain. Daniel dried himself as best he could, then stood there feeling awkward and out of place. "Better?" Olivia's voice made him turn. She'd changed into jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. Without the armor of her business attire, she looked younger, softer, more human. "Much," Daniel said. "Your house is beautiful." "Thank you. I bought it 3 years ago, right after the company went public. I kept telling myself it was an investment, but honestly," she smiled, I just wanted a place that felt like home. Mission accomplished. Coffee. Olivia moved to the expensive-looking espresso machine that dominated one corner of the counter. Actually, Daniel hesitated. I know you offered coffee, but I haven't eaten since lunch. Would it be completely inappropriate if I asked to raid your refrigerator instead? Olivia laughed, that real laugh again. You know what? I haven't eaten either. Let's make dinner. You cook? Why do you sound so surprised? I don't know. I guess I figured. I mean, you could afford to eat out every night. I can afford it, Olivia said, opening the refrigerator and surveying its contents. That doesn't mean I want to. There's something satisfying about making food with your own hands, creating something tangible. She glanced at him. I assume you cook? Every night, Lily's 6. She has opinions about chicken nuggets versus real food. Who usually wins that argument? Depends on how tired I am. They settled on pasta. Simple, quick, requiring ingredients that Olivia actually had on hand. Daniel found himself assigned to chopping vegetables while Olivia handled the sauce. They moved around the kitchen with surprising ease, occasionally bumping shoulders or reaching for the same utensil, laughing when they got in each other's way. So, Olivia said, stirring the sauce, tell me about Lily. Daniel smiled without meaning to, the automatic response to his daughter's name. What do you want to know? Everything, anything. You lit up when you mentioned her in the car. I want to understand why. So Daniel talked. He told Olivia about Lily's obsession with dinosaurs, how she could name 30 different species but still couldn't reliably tie her shoes. He talked about her drawings, currently covering every available surface of their apartment. He mentioned her fear of thunderstorms, ironic given the weather, and how she insisted on sleeping with every stuffed animal she owned arranged in a specific order around her pillow. He talked about the hard parts, too, about his ex-wife, Sarah, who'd left when Lily was 2 because motherhood wasn't what she'd expected, wasn't what she wanted. About the guilt of working long hours, of sometimes feeling like he was failing at both fatherhood and career. About the bone-deep exhaustion of doing everything alone. Olivia listened without interrupting, stirring the sauce with slow, steady movements. When Daniel finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a long moment. She's lucky to have you, Olivia said finally. I'm lucky to have her. That's not what I meant. Olivia turned to face him fully. Daniel, a lot of parents provide for their kids. Fewer actually show up for them. You clearly do both. I try. That's more than trying. That's love. The word hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Daniel wasn't quite ready to examine. What about you? He asked, deflecting. Any kids? No. Olivia turned back to the stove. I always thought there'd be time for that later. Get the company stable, find the right partner, then start a family. But later keeps getting later, The company's never really stable. There's always another crisis, another acquisition, another thing that needs my attention more than my personal life does. That sounds lonely. It is. The admission was quiet, almost lost under the sound of boiling water. But it's the choice I made. Choices can change. Can they? Olivia looked at him with something that might have been hope or might have been challenge. I'm 34 years old, Daniel. I run a company worth over $1 billion. I have 200 employees who depend on me making good decisions. When exactly am I supposed to fit in the messy, complicated, time-consuming work of building a personal life? You're doing it right now. The words escaped before Daniel could stop them. Olivia's eyes widened slightly and Daniel felt his face flush. I just mean, he stammered, we're having dinner, talking, being human. That's personal life, isn't it? I suppose it is, Olivia said softly, though I have a feeling this isn't exactly what you planned for your evening. Plans are overrated. Lily taught me that. You can have the whole day mapped out perfectly, and then she'll find a puddle, and suddenly the next hour is about understanding water displacement. That sounds wonderful. It is. Messy, but wonderful. They ate at Olivia's kitchen table, pasta served in mismatched bowls because, as Olivia explained with embarrassment, she'd never gotten around to buying a proper set. The storm continued its assault outside, but inside the house felt warm and safe and strangely intimate. The conversation flowed easily now, jumping from topic to topic without the awkwardness of their earlier exchanges. They talked about work and movies and books. Olivia confessed to a secret addiction to terrible reality TV. Daniel admitted he'd never seen Star Wars, which made Olivia gasp in mock horror. "How is that possible?" she demanded. "It's a cultural institution." "I was busy raising a child by myself," Daniel said, grinning. "Watching space operas kind of fell off the priority list. We need to fix this. It's not right." "Are you ordering me to watch Star Wars, Miss Bennett?" "First, we're in my kitchen eating pasta I cooked. You can call me Olivia. Second, yes. Consider it a professional development requirement." They laughed, and Daniel realized with some surprise that he was genuinely enjoying himself. When was the last time he'd done this? Just sat and talked with another adult without worrying about deadlines or bedtimes or bills. Hours slipped past unnoticed. The storm showed no signs of abating. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse, wind howling like something alive and angry. Olivia glanced at the window, then at the clock on the microwave. "It's almost midnight." "Shit." Daniel pulled out his phone. 3 missed calls from Mrs. Chen along with a text. "Lily's fine, spending the night here rather than going home in the storm. You should stay wherever you are too. Be safe." Relief and guilt warred in Daniel's chest. He was grateful Mrs. Chen was keeping Lily safe, but he hated missing another night with his daughter. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked, noticing his expression. "Yeah, my neighbor has Lily. They're staying put because of the weather." He looked up at the windows, watching rain streak down the glass in rivers. "Which is probably what I should do too. This isn't driving weather." "You're welcome to stay here," Olivia said. The offer came quickly, almost reflexively, and then she seemed to realize what she'd said. "I mean, I have a guest room. It's the practical thing. Driving in this would be dangerous." Daniel should have refused, should have made some excuse, braved the storm, maintained appropriate professional distance. Instead, he heard himself say, "Are you sure?" "Positive. Come on, I'll get you some blankets." She led him upstairs to a small but comfortable guest room. Clean sheets, soft pillows, a window that looked out over the backyard where trees thrashed in the wind like they were trying to uproot themselves. "Bathrooms across the hall," Olivia said. "There should be spare toothbrushes in the cabinet. Help yourself to anything you need." "Thank you, Olivia, really." She smiled, and for a moment they just stood there in the doorway, neither quite wanting to break the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "Good night, Daniel," Olivia said finally. "Good night." She turned to leave, and that's when Daniel's mouth betrayed him for the second time that evening. "Olivia?" She paused, looking back over her shoulder. "Yes?" "I'll stay," Daniel said quietly, "but I'm not sleeping on the sofa." The words hung in the air between them, and Daniel watched Olivia's expression shift from confusion to surprise to something else he couldn't quite identify. Her eyes widened, her lips parted slightly. What?" she managed. And that's when Daniel realized exactly how his statement had sounded. Heat flooded his face. His ears burned. He held up both hands in a gesture of immediate surrender. "Oh God, that came out wrong," he said quickly. I just meant the couch looked small and uncomfortable, and you said you were giving me the guest room. So I'm not sleeping on the couch. I'm sleeping in here, in the guest room, which is what you already said. And now I'm rambling like an idiot, and please pretend the last 30 seconds didn't happen." For a long, agonizing moment, Olivia just stared at him. Daniel wondered if it was possible to die of embarrassment, if his heart could just stop from sheer mortification. Then Olivia started laughing. Not a polite chuckle. A real, genuine, almost helpless laugh that made her double over slightly, one hand pressed to her stomach. She laughed so hard tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. "I'm sorry," she gasped between bursts of laughter. "I'm sorry, your face. The look of absolute horror when you realized what you'd said." Daniel felt his own lips twitching despite his embarrassment. "Glad I could provide entertainment." No, it's just..." Olivia wiped at her eyes, still grinning. "You look like you wanted the floor to swallow you whole." "Can it still do that? Because I'm open to the option." That set her off again. Eventually, her laughter subsided into occasional giggles. She looked at Daniel with warmth and amusement, and something else that made his chest feel strange. "You're a good man, Daniel Harper," she said softly. "An awkward one sometimes, but good. I try. That's what makes it true." She left then, closing the door gently behind her. Daniel stood in the middle of the guest room, listening to her footsteps retreat down the hall, and wondered what the hell had just happened. He got ready for bed mechanically, borrowed toothbrush, quick wash, settling under covers that smelled like lavender detergent. The storm continued outside, but inside the house felt quiet and safe. Daniel stared at the ceiling and thought about the evening, about Olivia's laugh, about the easy way they'd talked in her kitchen, about the way she'd looked at him when she said, "You're a good man." This was his boss. This was inappropriate. This couldn't happen. But something had already happened. Something had shifted between them during those hours of cooking and conversation and unexpected honesty. Something neither of them had planned for or intended. Something that felt, despite all logic and reason, remarkably like the beginning of something important. Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, Daniel closed his eyes and let sleep pull him under. The sound of rain, a lullaby he hadn't realized he'd been missing. In another room down the hall, Olivia Bennett lay in her own bed, staring at her own ceiling, thinking remarkably similar thoughts. The storm raged on. But inside that house, in the warm darkness and the sound of rain, two people who shouldn't have connected found themselves wondering what might happen if they dared to try. Neither of them slept easily that night. Both of them knew, on some level they couldn't quite acknowledge yet, that everything had already changed. The storm had brought them together. What happened next would be entirely up to them. Morning arrived with startling gentleness. The storm had finally exhausted itself sometime before dawn, leaving behind a washed, clean sky and the kind of profound quiet that only follows violence. Daniel woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the disorienting sensation of not knowing, for several confused seconds, where he was. Then memory returned in a rush. The storm, the drive, Olivia's kitchen, his mortifying comment about the sofa. He groaned and pulled the pillow over his face. His phone showed 6:15 a.m. and a new text from Mrs. Chen. "Lily had pancakes. She's watching cartoons." No rush. Daniel smiled despite his embarrassment. Mrs. Chen was 72 years old and treated Lily like the granddaughter she'd never had. Sometimes Daniel wondered what he'd do without her. He got up, used the bathroom, tried unsuccessfully to make his hair look less like he'd been electrocuted, and ventured downstairs. The smell of coffee hit him halfway down, rich and dark and promising. He followed it to the kitchen and found Olivia already there, barefoot in yoga pants and a faded Stanford t-shirt, her hair piled in a messy bun, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "Morning," she said without turning around. "I heard you moving around. Figured you'd need this." "You figured right." Daniel accepted the mug gratefully. "Thank you. Sleep okay?" "Better than I expected, honestly. That guest bed is more comfortable than mine." Olivia smiled over the rim of her coffee cup. "Good. I was worried you'd spend the whole night regretting your awkward couch comment." Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. "We're talking about that, are we?" "Oh, absolutely. It was the highlight of my evening." "Glad my humiliation could provide entertainment." "Daniel!" Olivia set down her mug and looked at him with unexpected seriousness. "I wasn't making fun of you. Well, maybe a little. But mostly I just thought it was sweet." "Sweet?" "You were so horrified at the idea that you might have said something inappropriate. Most men in that situation would have just laughed it off or pretended they meant it. You practically tripped over yourself apologizing. That's just basic human decency. You'd be surprised how rare basic human decency actually is." Olivia picked up her coffee again. "Anyway, hungry?" They made breakfast together. Eggs, toast, fruit that Olivia cut with impressive precision. The kitchen that had felt intimate the night before now felt comfortable in a different way. Morning soft and easy. They moved around each other like people who'd been doing this for years rather than hours. "So," Daniel said as they sat down at the table. "About work." "What about it?" "Well, I drove my boss home, spent the night at her house, and now we're having breakfast together. I'm pretty sure that violates at least 17 HR policies." Olivia laughed. "Probably. But for what it's worth, I don't regret it." "No?" "No. Last night was..." She paused, searching for the right word. "Nice? Normal? I haven't had normal in a long time." "Same here, just with different reasons." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. A dog barked, a car door slammed, someone's sprinkler system activated with a mechanical whir. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said suddenly. "Sure." "Last night, when you were talking about Lily, about being a single parent, you seemed so comfortable with it, like you'd made peace with the hard parts." "I wouldn't say peace exactly, more like acceptance." "How did you get there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks impossible. Balancing everything, never having enough time, constantly choosing between competing priorities." She set down her fork. "How do you do it without going crazy?" Daniel considered the question. "I don't think I have a good answer. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together, but I guess the secret is that Lily doesn't need perfect. She just needs present. As long as I show up for her, even if I'm tired or distracted or serving chicken nuggets for the third night in a row, that's enough. That's all it takes? Just showing up? That's everything it takes." Olivia looked at him with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple. It's just what matters." Something in Olivia's face shifted then, some decision being made or unmade. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. The moment stretched between them, fragile, and waited. The spell broke when Daniel's phone buzzed. "Mrs. Chen, Lily wants to know when you're coming home. She has important dinosaur news." Daniel smiled. "I should probably go. Apparently there's been a dinosaur development." "Important stuff," Olivia said, but her tone was gentle, almost wistful. They cleaned up together, washing dishes in companionable silence. When everything was put away, they stood in the kitchen doorway, neither quite ready to move toward goodbye. "Thank you," Daniel said, "for everything. The ride offer, dinner, letting me stay. Thank you for driving me home, for making me laugh, for reminding me what normal feels like." "Anytime." The word slipped out before Daniel could think about what it meant, what it implied. Olivia's eyes widened slightly, and for a heartbeat, they just looked at each other. "I should walk you out," Olivia said finally. She followed him to the door, watched as he pulled on his still damp jacket from the night before. The morning sun made her kitchen glow gold, made her look softer than he'd ever seen her. "Drive safe," she said. "Always do." Daniel made it 3 steps down her front path before he heard her voice again. "Daniel?" He turned. Olivia stood in the doorway, backlit and beautiful, and for a moment Daniel forgot how to breathe. "See you Monday," she said. "See you Monday." He drove home through a city transformed. The storm had washed away the usual Portland grit, leaving everything sharp-edged and clean. Trees dripped onto sidewalks, puddles reflected sky. The world felt new. Daniel tried to focus on the road, on getting home to Lily, on all the normal things he needed to do: laundry, grocery shopping, fixing the leaky bathroom faucet he'd been ignoring for weeks. But his mind kept returning to Olivia's kitchen, to the easy way they'd talked, to the look in her eyes when she'd said, "See you Monday." This was his boss. This couldn't go anywhere. But something had already started, something neither of them had planned for, something that felt, despite all logic, like possibility. Monday arrived with the inevitability of a train Daniel couldn't stop. He dropped Lily at school, kissed her forehead, told her he loved her, then drove to Bennett Technologies with his stomach doing complicated gymnastics. He had no idea what to expect. Would things be awkward? Would they pretend Friday night hadn't happened? Would Olivia regret the easy intimacy they'd shared? Daniel parked, took the elevator to 15, walked to his desk, and tried to focus on work. He made it exactly 90 minutes before the rumors started. It began with Marcus Chen, a fellow engineer who worked 2 desks over. Marcus leaned back in his chair and called across the workspace with studied casualness. "Hey, Daniel. Crazy storm Friday night, right?" "Yeah," Daniel said, not looking up from his monitor. Really came out of nowhere. "Were you here late?" "Until about 10:30. Why?" "Just curious." Marcus's tone was too innocent. "I heard the CEO was here late too." Daniel's fingers paused over his keyboard. "Okay." "Someone from the cleaning crew mentioned seeing you 2 leave together." The workspace had gone quiet. Not obviously quiet. Keyboards still clicked, phones still rang. But the quality of the silence had changed. People were listening. "I gave her a ride home," Daniel said evenly. Her car broke down and the ride shares were all booked because of the weather. That was nice of you. It seemed like the decent thing to do. Sure, sure, Marcus grinned. Very decent, very friendly. Daniel closed his eyes and counted to 5. Marcus, what exactly are you trying to say? Nothing, man. Just making conversation. But the damage was done. Daniel could feel eyes on him for the rest of the morning, could hear the whispers that stopped when he walked past. By lunch, his phone had 3 texts from other engineers making variations of the same joke. Moving up in the world, Harper? He ignored them all and tried to focus on work. At 2:30, his desk phone rang. Internal number. Extension 1501. Olivia's office. This is Daniel, he said carefully. Daniel, it's Olivia. Could you come up to my office for a moment? Her voice was pure CEO, professional, neutral, giving nothing away. Daniel's stomach dropped. Of course, I'll be right there. He took the elevator up 1 floor to the executive level. The 16th floor was different from 15, quieter, carpeted, smelling faintly of expensive coffee and stress. Olivia's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, waved him through without comment. Olivia sat behind her desk in full CEO mode, suit jacket, hair swept up, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when he entered, and for just a fraction of a second her professional mask slipped. Daniel saw exhaustion underneath, and something that might have been regret. "Close the door," she said. Daniel did, then stood there feeling like a student called to the principal's office. "Sit, please." Olivia gestured to one of the leather chairs facing her desk. "We need to talk." "About the rumors," Daniel said, sitting. "You've heard them already?" "Hard to miss. Apparently someone saw us leave together Friday night." Olivia removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "I should have anticipated this. Should have thought about how it would look. You needed a ride. I gave you one. That's all that happened." "I know that. You know that. But perception matters, Daniel, especially when there's a power differential involved." The words stung more than they should have. "So what do we do?" "Nothing," Olivia said firmly. "We do nothing. We don't acknowledge the rumors, we don't feed them, we just let them die naturally. In a week, everyone will find something else to gossip about. And until then? Until then, we maintain appropriate professional distance. No more rides home, no more—" She trailed off, something painful flickering across her face. "No more Friday nights." Daniel felt the words like a physical blow. "Right, of course." "This isn't what I want," Olivia said quietly, "but it's what's necessary. I can't show favoritism. I can't put you in a position where people question your accomplishments, and I can't risk the company over—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. "I understand," Daniel said, standing. "Was there anything else?" "No, that's all." Daniel made it to the door before Olivia's voice stopped him. "Daniel?" He turned. She was standing now, no longer behind the safety of her desk, and the professional mask had cracked completely. She looked vulnerable in a way that made his chest ache. "I meant what I said Friday night," she said, "about you being a good man, about last night being nice. I don't regret it. But it can't happen again." "No, it can't." Daniel nodded once. "See you around, Ms. Bennett." The formality was deliberate, a return to proper boundaries. Olivia flinched slightly, but didn't correct him. "See you around, Mr. Harper." He left her office and took the stairs down instead of the elevator, needing the physical exertion to clear his head. By the time he reached his desk, he'd almost convinced himself this was for the best. Almost. The week crawled past with agonizing slowness. Daniel threw himself into work, stayed late every night, picked up Lily from Mrs. Chen's with apologies that were becoming routine. The rumors gradually faded, replaced by newer gossip about a restructuring in the sales department. He didn't see Olivia. Not in person, anyway. Just her name in email chains and her initials on approval forms. Friday afternoon, Daniel was debugging a deployment issue when his phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "It's Olivia. Don't respond to this. Just read it." Daniel's heart rate immediately doubled. The next message came through seconds later. "I know I said we needed distance. I know this is inappropriate, but I can't stop thinking about that night, about talking to you, about how easy it felt." Then, "I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know. Daniel stared at his phone for a full minute. Professional distance, proper boundaries, all the sensible reasons they couldn't do this. Then he thought about Olivia's laugh in her kitchen. The way she'd looked at him when she said, "You're a good man." The wistful note in her voice when she'd talked about normal. He typed, "Coffee? Tomorrow morning." Not as CEO and engineer, just as people. The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, where? There's a place on Division. The Early Bird. 8 a.m. I'll be there. Daniel deleted both message threads immediately, then sat back in his chair and wondered if he'd just made a huge mistake or the first honest decision in days. Saturday morning arrived clear and bright, the kind of Portland spring day that made people forget about the rain. Daniel dropped Lily at her friend's house for a play date, kissed her goodbye, and drove to Division Street with his pulse hammering in his throat. The Early Bird was a neighborhood coffee shop, small and unpretentious, the kind of place where CEOs wouldn't usually be found. Daniel got there 15 minutes early and claimed a table in the back corner. Olivia walked in at exactly 8 o'clock wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked around the small space, spotted Daniel, and smiled. That smile made every risk worth it. She ordered at the counter, black coffee, blueberry muffin, then slid into the seat across from him. "Hi," she said. "Hi yourself." They looked at each other for a long moment, neither quite knowing how to start. "This is crazy," Olivia finally said. "Completely insane," Daniel agreed. "We shouldn't be doing this." "Probably not. But I'm really glad we are." "Me too." Mom, the tension broke. They both laughed, and suddenly it was easier, more like that Friday night in her kitchen. "I miss talking to you," Olivia admitted. "This week felt wrong, like I'd cut off something important before it had a chance to grow." "I felt it too, like there was this conversation we were supposed to be having, and instead we were pretending we barely knew each other." "We barely do know each other," Olivia pointed out. "One dinner doesn't make us friends." "Doesn't it? I feel like I know you better after one dinner than I know people I've worked with for years." Olivia stirred sugar into her coffee with slow, deliberate movements. "Can I ask you something that might sound strange?" "After the week we've had, I don't think anything sounds strange anymore." "What do you want from this? From whatever this is?" Daniel considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I don't know. I'm not looking for a relationship. I barely have time to parent, let alone date. But I like talking to you. I like how I feel when I'm around you, and I think maybe that's enough for now." "Just friends?" "Friends feels like the wrong word. But something that's ours." Olivia's eyes were bright behind the steam rising from her coffee. "I'd like that. Something that's ours." They talked for 2 hours. About everything and nothing. Olivia told Daniel about growing up in Silicon Valley, the daughter of an engineer who'd built one of the first personal computers. About how she'd always felt pressure to succeed to justify her advantages. About the loneliness of leadership. Daniel talked about Lily, about learning to be both mother and father, about the fierce protectiveness that came with single parenthood, about his own childhood in rural Oregon, raised by parents who'd never understood his love of computers. The conversation wandered from topic to topic with easy intimacy, books they'd loved, places they wanted to travel, embarrassing college stories, the comfortable rhythm of two people discovering they fit together in unexpected ways. Around 10, Olivia glanced at her watch and sighed. "I should go. I have a conference call at 11. "On a Saturday?" "Tokyo office. Time zones are cruel." They walked out together into the bright spring morning. Olivia's car was parked 3 spaces down from Daniel's Civic. "Same time next week?" Daniel asked. "I'd like that." Olivia hesitated, then added quietly, "But we have to be careful, Daniel. At work, we can't give anyone reason to talk." "I know. No rides home, no personal conversations in the office, no favoritism." "Understood. This stays separate, this stays ours." "Okay." Olivia reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. The touch lasted maybe 2 seconds, but Daniel felt it like electricity. "See you Monday, Mr. Harper." "See you Monday, Miss Bennett." She drove away first. Daniel stood in the parking lot for a moment, his hand still tingling from her touch, and tried to figure out what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The weeks that followed developed their own rhythm. At work, Daniel and Olivia were scrupulously professional. They barely spoke except in meetings. They avoided each other in hallways. If anything, Daniel worked harder than before, determined to prove his accomplishments had nothing to do with their relationship. But Saturday mornings belonged to them. 8 a.m. at the Early Bird became sacred time. Sometimes they talked about work. More often, they talked about everything else. Olivia met Lily one Saturday when the playdate fell through, a careful, brief introduction in a park far from downtown. Lily, who was shy with strangers, chattered about dinosaurs while Olivia listened with genuine interest. "She's wonderful," Olivia said later, after Lily had run off to the playground. "You're doing an amazing job with her." "Thanks. She likes you, which is rare. She's usually suspicious of new people." "Maybe she senses you trust me." "I do trust you. That's the scary part." They kept their meetings secret, varied their locations, were careful never to be seen together outside of work. It felt ridiculous and necessary in equal measure. By the 6th week, Daniel realized he was in trouble. He thought about Olivia constantly. During code reviews, during bedtime stories with Lily, during the quiet moments before sleep. He replayed their conversations, memorized the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, found himself counting down the days until Saturday. This was supposed to be simple, just friends, nothing complicated. But somewhere between coffee dates and careful distance, something had shifted, something that felt dangerously close to falling. The moment Daniel acknowledged it to himself, he knew he had to tell her. The next Saturday, they met at a new place, a small bakery in southeast Portland. Olivia arrived looking tired, shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Rough week?" Daniel asked. "Rough month. The acquisition is becoming complicated. Board meetings every day. I'm running on coffee and stress at this point." She managed a weak smile. "But I'm here. I wouldn't miss this." They ordered, found a quiet corner table, went through the usual small talk. But Daniel's mind was elsewhere, rehearsing and discarding ways to say what needed to be said. Finally, he just said it. "Olivia, I need to tell you something." She looked up from her croissant, suddenly wary. "Okay. This thing we're doing, the Saturday mornings, the careful distance at work, pretending we're just friends, I don't think I can do it anymore." The color drained from Olivia's face. "Oh, not because I don't want to," Daniel said quickly, "because I want more than this, more than secret coffee dates and stolen moments. I want to actually know you, not just the version of you that fits into 2 hours on Saturday mornings." Olivia set down her coffee with shaking hands. "Daniel, I know this is complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons this is a bad idea. The power differential, the company policies, the fact that I'm a single father with no time and you're a CEO with even less. I know all of it. Then why? Because none of it matters as much as how I feel when I'm with you." Daniel leaned forward, holding her gaze. "You make me want to find time I don't have. You make me remember there's more to life than just surviving from one day to the next. And I think maybe, I hope, you feel something similar." The silence stretched between them. Olivia's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "This could ruin both our careers," she finally whispered. "It could. People will talk. They'll say I'm showing favoritism, that you're using me to get ahead. Let them talk. It's not that simple, Daniel. I have responsibilities. 200 employees depending on me making good decisions. I can't risk the company for... For what?" Daniel asked gently. "For the possibility of being happy?" Olivia closed her eyes. A single tear escaped, tracking down her cheek. "I'm scared. Of what? Of wanting this too much, of making the wrong choice, of letting people down." She opened her eyes and looked at him with devastating honesty. "Of not being enough for you and Lily." "Olivia." Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. "You don't have to be anything other than yourself. That's already more than enough. You don't know what you're asking. I'm not asking for anything you're not willing to give. I'm just asking you to stop hiding from something that could be good." Olivia gripped his hand tightly, like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "If we do this, if we really try this, we have to do it right. No more secrets. Full transparency with HR. Transfer you to a different reporting structure so there's no conflict of interest." "Okay. It'll be messy. People will talk no matter what we do." Let them talk. And Lily has to come first, always. If this gets complicated, if it affects her in any way, then we stop, Daniel finished. She comes first, no question. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, warring with herself. Daniel could see the battle in her eyes, duty versus desire, responsibility versus risk. Finally, she squeezed his hand. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. The smile that spread across Daniel's face felt like sunrise. Yeah? Yeah, but Daniel? If we're doing this, I need you to understand something. Olivia's voice was steady now, certain. I don't do anything halfway. Not business, not life, and not this. If I'm in, I'm all in. I wouldn't expect anything less. They sat there holding hands across a small bakery table while the world continued around them, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, maybe years, something felt right. They had no idea what came next, no roadmap for navigating workplace relationships or blending single parenthood with CEO schedules. They were walking into complicated territory with nothing but hope and the memory of one stormy night when everything had started. But they were walking into it together, and somehow that made all the difference. The decision to move forward changed everything and nothing all at once. They still met on Saturday mornings, but now Daniel could reach across the table and take Olivia's hand without pretending it was accidental. They still maintained professional distance at work, but the weight of secrecy had lifted, replaced by something that felt more like patience. The hard part was waiting for the right moment to make it official. We need to talk to HR before we do anything else, Olivia said during their third Saturday after the bakery conversation. They were walking along the waterfront, keeping careful distance between them in public, watching sailboats glide across the Willamette River. Transfer requests, disclosure forms, all of it. We do this by the book. When? Daniel asked. Soon. I'm meeting with the board next week about the acquisition. Once that settles, we'll have breathing room to handle the internal logistics. And then? Olivia glanced at him, a small smile playing at her lips. And then we stop hiding. But the universe, as it often does, had different plans. The following Tuesday, Daniel was deep in a code review when Marcus Chen appeared at his desk with an expression that immediately set off alarm bells. Conference room 3, Marcus said quietly. Now, leadership wants to see you. Daniel's stomach dropped. About what? They didn't say. But Rachel from HR is there, and she looked serious. The walk to conference room 3 felt like a death march. Daniel's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Had someone seen him with Olivia? Had the rumors resurfaced? Was he being fired? He opened the door to find 3 people waiting. Rachel Kim from HR, Thomas Bradford, the CFO, and Olivia. His heart stuttered at the sight of her, professional and composed in a charcoal suit, her face carefully neutral. Mr. Harper, please sit, Rachel said, gesturing to a chair. Daniel sat, acutely aware of Olivia's presence across the table. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Daniel, Thomas began, and the use of his first name somehow made everything worse. We're conducting a routine review of departmental structures as part of our acquisition integration. Your name came up in an interesting context. Okay, Daniel said, carefully. Rachel opened a folder. You've been with Bennett Technologies for 18 months. In that time, your performance reviews have been consistently excellent. Your last project exceeded expectations and came in under budget. Your team lead has recommended you for senior engineer twice. That's good to hear, Daniel said, confused. Is there a problem? Not a problem exactly, Thomas said. More of an opportunity. We're restructuring the engineering department to better align with our growth trajectory. We need someone to lead a new team focused on infrastructure modernization. Your name keeps coming up. Daniel blinked. You're offering me a promotion? We're offering you a lateral transfer with leadership responsibilities, Rachel corrected. Different reporting structure, different projects, significant increase in scope. It would mean longer hours initially, but also a substantial raise in equity options. I don't understand. Why now? Thomas and Rachel exchanged glances. Olivia remained perfectly still, her hands folded on the table in front of her. The timing is coincidental, Rachel said, which Daniel immediately recognized as HR speak for a lie. But we need to move quickly. The new team structure rolls out in 2 weeks. We need your answer by Friday. Daniel looked at Olivia then, really looked at her, trying to read the message in her carefully blank expression. She gave the tiniest nod, so small he might have imagined it. "Can I think about it?" Daniel asked. "Of course," Thomas said, standing. "Take the rest of the week. But Daniel, I want to be clear. This is a genuine opportunity. Your work speaks for itself. We wouldn't be offering this if we didn't believe you were the right person for the role." The meeting ended. Thomas and Rachel left first. Daniel started to follow, but Olivia's voice stopped him. "Mr. Harper, one moment, please." He turned. She waited until the door clicked shut, then let out a long breath. "That wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said quietly. "You knew about the promotion? I recommended you for it 3 weeks ago, before we decided to move forward with us. The timing is terrible, I know. But Daniel, this is real. You earned this. Your work earned this. It looks like favoritism. It would if you were still reporting under my division, but this transfer puts you under Thomas. Completely different chain of command, no conflict of interest." Daniel sank back into his chair. "You planned this." "I planned for us to have options," Olivia corrected. "I knew we couldn't move forward unless we solved the reporting structure problem. When Thomas mentioned restructuring, I made sure your name was in the conversation. But the decision to offer you this role? That was all them. I recused myself from the final vote." "Olivia, you don't have to take it," she said quickly. "If you think this is wrong, if it feels like I'm manipulating your career, say no. I'll understand." Daniel studied her face, looking for deception and finding only sincerity and a hint of fear. "Do you want me to take it?" he asked. "I want you to make whatever choice is right for you and Lily. But yes, selfishly, I want you to take it, because it solves our biggest problem, because it means we can stop hiding, and because I think you'd be brilliant at it. The hours will be longer." "They will. Lily already barely sees me." "I know. But the money would be life-changing. I could afford better childcare, maybe even move to a bigger apartment." Olivia smiled slightly. "There's that too." Daniel closed his eyes and tried to think past the emotions clouding his judgment. This was a good opportunity. A great one, actually. The kind of career advancement that could change his and Lily's life. And if it also happened to solve the complications around dating Olivia, well, maybe that was just fortunate timing. Or maybe it was Olivia using her position to manipulate circumstances in their favor. He looked at her again, at the hope and worry warring in her expression, and realized the truth was probably somewhere in between. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "Really think about it. That's all I ask." He made it to the door before turning back one more time. "Olivia, thank you for thinking of me. Even if I don't take it, thank you. You earned it, Daniel. Don't forget that." He spent the next 3 days in agonizing deliberation. He made pro and con lists. He ran financial projections. He called his sister in Seattle and talked through the decision until she told him to stop overthinking and trust his gut. But mostly, he thought about Lily. Thursday evening, after putting her to bed, Daniel sat at their tiny kitchen table and stared at the walls covered in her artwork. Dinosaurs and rainbows and stick figure families. A life built from love and careful budgeting and constant compromise. The promotion would mean more money, better opportunities, a future with less financial stress. But it would also mean less time, more late nights, more missed bedtimes. He was still sitting there when his phone buzzed. Text from Olivia. "No pressure, whatever you decide is right." Daniel smiled despite his anxiety. He typed back, "Can I see you tonight?" The response came immediately. "Where?" 20 minutes later, Daniel stood on Olivia's front porch, the same porch where he'd stood that stormy night months ago. She opened the door in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, hair damp from a recent shower, and Daniel felt something settle in his chest at the sight of her. "Hi," she said. "Hi, sorry to just show up." "Don't be. Come in." They settled in her living room, Daniel on the couch, Olivia curled in the armchair across from him. The house felt different than it had that first night, more lived in, more comfortable, more like home. "I can't decide," Daniel admitted. "Every time I think I've made up my mind, I second-guess myself." "What's holding you back?" "Lily, the hours, the fear that I'm choosing my career over being her father." "You could never do that," Olivia said firmly. "I've seen you with her, Daniel, the way you talk about her, the choices you make. That little girl is your whole world." "She is. Which is why this is so hard. The money would help us so much. But what good is money if she doesn't have me? Olivia was quiet for a moment, then uncurled from the chair and came to sit beside him on the couch. Not touching, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. "Can I tell you what I see?" she asked. "Please." "I see someone who's been running on fumes for years, sacrificing everything to give his daughter a good life. Someone who's so afraid of failing her that he won't let himself succeed at anything else. Someone who thinks choosing himself means abandoning her." The words hit harder than Daniel expected. "That's not—" "It is," Olivia said gently. "And I understand it. I do. But Daniel, taking this promotion isn't choosing yourself over Lily. It's choosing a better future for both of you. Yes? The hours will be longer initially, but you'll have resources you don't have now. You could hire better help, reduce stress, maybe even take her on vacation somewhere that isn't just camping in your sister's backyard." "How did you know about the camping?" "You mentioned it once. The point is, you're allowed to want things for yourself. You're allowed to build a career you're proud of. That doesn't make you a bad father. It makes you human." Daniel felt something crack open in his chest, some tightly held fear finally releasing. "What if I fail? What if I take this job and I'm terrible at it?" "Then you'll figure it out, just like you figured out everything else." "But Daniel?" Olivia reached over and took his hand. "You won't fail. You're one of the smartest, most dedicated people I've ever met. You'll be amazing at this." "You have to say that. You're biased." "I am," Olivia agreed, smiling. "But I'm also right." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands linked, watching shadows from the streetlights play across the walls. "If I take this job," Daniel said slowly, "if I transfer to Thomas's division, then there's nothing stopping us from being together. Officially." "No, there isn't." "That terrifies me." "Me too." "But not enough to stop?" Olivia squeezed his hand. "Not nearly enough to stop." Daniel made his decision that night, sitting on Olivia's couch with her hand in his. He would take the promotion. He would trust that he could balance the demands of the new role with being Lily's father. He would stop letting fear make all his choices, and he would stop hiding from the possibility of being happy. Friday morning, he walked into Rachel Kim's office and accepted the position. "Excellent," Rachel said, smiling. "We're thrilled to have you in this role. Now there are some forms to fill out, standard HR procedures." She slid a packet across the desk. Daniel skimmed the first few pages, tax documents, benefits elections, the usual bureaucracy. Then he reached the disclosure forms. "This section," Rachel said, tapping a page, "is for reporting any relationships that could present conflicts of interest. Romantic relationships with other employees, financial entanglements, that sort of thing. It's standard policy, nothing to worry about." Daniel's pen hovered over the form. This was the moment. The choice between continuing to hide and stepping fully into something real. He thought about Olivia saying, "I don't do anything halfway." He thought about Lily, who deserved to see her father happy. He thought about that stormy night and every Saturday morning since, about the feeling of something important beginning. Then he checked the box marked yes and wrote Olivia's name in the space provided. Rachel's eyebrows rose slightly. "Ms. Bennett?" "We've been seeing each other outside of work," Daniel said, keeping his voice steady. "Nothing happened while I was in her reporting structure, but I wanted to disclose it now that I'm transferring." Rachel studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she made a note in her file. "I appreciate your transparency, Mr. Harper. Given that you'll be reporting to Mr. Bradford, this doesn't present a conflict of interest. However, I'll need to document this and have a conversation with Ms. Bennett as well." "Of course. Is there anything else I should know?" Daniel thought about secret coffee dates and careful distance and all the ways they tried to do the right thing, even when it felt impossible. "Just that we've been very careful," he said, "and we intend to continue being careful." "I believe you," Rachel said, and something in her tone suggested she genuinely meant it. "For what it's worth, I think you'll do well in this new role. Welcome to the leadership team, Daniel." The news spread through the company with predictable speed. By Monday morning, everyone knew about Daniel's promotion. By Monday afternoon, everyone knew about Daniel and Olivia. The reactions were mixed. Some people were genuinely happy for them. Others were suspicious, whispering about favoritism and inappropriate relationships. Marcus Chen caught Daniel in the break room with a knowing grin. "So," Marcus said, "the rumors were true after all." "It's not what you think," Daniel started, but Marcus held up a hand. "Man, I don't care. You're good at your job. You earned the promotion. And honestly, good for you. The CEO is gorgeous. It's not about that." "I know. I've seen the way you look at her when you think no one's watching. That's not about looks or money or career advancement. That's about something real." Daniel blinked, surprised by Marcus's perceptiveness. "Yeah, it is." "Then ignore the gossip. People will talk no matter what you do. Live your life." The advice was simple but profound. Daniel carried it with him through the whispers and sideways glances, through the awkward conversations and knowing looks. The hardest part was waiting to be truly public about it. Company policy required a 30-day waiting period after disclosure before they could be openly together at work events. Another layer of patience, another test of commitment. But Saturday mornings continued. Only now, when Daniel reached for Olivia's hand across the coffee shop table, he didn't have to let go. 3 weeks into Daniel's new role, Olivia invited him to dinner at her house. A real date, she specified. No more pretending they were just friends grabbing coffee. "Can I bring Lily?" Daniel asked. "Mrs. Chen has a family thing this weekend." He held his breath, waiting for Olivia to backtrack, to say it was too soon for that level of involvement. Instead, she smiled. "I'd love that. I'll make something kid-friendly." Saturday evening, Daniel pulled into Olivia's driveway with Lily bouncing excitedly in the back seat. "Is this really where your friend lives, Daddy?" Lily asked, eyes wide at the size of the house. "Yep. Remember what we talked about? Ms. Olivia is very nice, but you need to use your manners." "I always use my manners," Lily said with 6-year-old indignation. Olivia opened the door before they could knock, and Daniel felt his breath catch. She'd dressed casually, jeans and a soft blue sweater, but she'd clearly put thought into it. Her hair was loose, her smile genuine and just nervous enough to be endearing. "Hi," she said, then looked down at Lily. "You must be Lily. I've heard so much about you." Lily, suddenly shy, pressed against Daniel's leg. "Hi." "Do you like mac and cheese?" Olivia asked. "Because I made a lot of it." That broke through Lily's reserve. "I love mac and cheese." "Then you're going to have a great dinner. Come on in." The evening unfolded with surprising ease. Lily, after her initial shyness, warmed to Olivia quickly. They ate dinner in the kitchen, Lily chattering about her favorite dinosaurs while Olivia listened with genuine interest. "Did you know," Lily said importantly, "that the T-Rex couldn't actually roar? They probably made sounds more like birds." "I didn't know that," Olivia said seriously. "That's fascinating. Most people get it wrong in movies, but I know the real facts. I can tell you're an expert." After dinner, they moved to the living room. Lily brought the coloring book and crayons Daniel had packed, spreading out on the floor with intense concentration. Daniel and Olivia sat on the couch, close but not touching, hyper-aware of young eyes that might notice too much. "She's wonderful," Olivia said quietly, watching Lily color a stegosaurus with meticulous care. "She is, but she's also a lot. If this is too much, if you're not ready for the kid package..." "Daniel," Olivia turned to face him. "I'm not here for a version of you that doesn't include her. She's part of who you are. I get that. It's just, most people aren't interested in dating someone with a 6-year-old. The complications, the lack of flexibility, I'm not most people, and I happen to think Lily is pretty great." As if summoned by her name, Lily looked up from her coloring. "Miss Olivia, do you want to color with me?" "I'd love to." Olivia slid off the couch and settled on the floor beside Lily. "What should I color?" "The pterodactyl. But you have to use the right colors." They probably had feathers and were lots of different colors, not just brown. "You're the expert. Tell me what to do." Daniel watched them together, his daughter and this woman who was somehow becoming important to both of them, and felt something shift in his chest. This was real. This was happening. This was a future he could almost believe in. Later, after Lily fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from dinner and coloring, and showing Olivia her extensive dinosaur knowledge, Daniel carried her to the car. Olivia walked them out, standing in her driveway with her arms wrapped around herself against the cool night air. Thank you for tonight, Daniel said quietly, not wanting to wake Lily, for making her feel welcome. Thank you for sharing her with me. I know that's not a small thing. It's not, but I wanted you to see all of it, the good and the complicated and the exhausting. This is my life, Olivia. This is what dating me looks like. I know. Olivia stepped closer, close enough that Daniel could smell her shampoo. And I want all of it. Even the bedtime meltdowns and the constant dinosaur facts. Especially those. They stood there in the driveway, not quite touching, the space between them charged with everything they couldn't say, with Lily sleeping 10 feet away. I should go, Daniel said, not moving. You should, Olivia agreed, not moving either. Finally, Daniel took a breath and stepped back. See you tomorrow? Tomorrow, Olivia confirmed. Then, softer. Be careful driving home. Always am. The 30-day waiting period ended on a Tuesday. Daniel marked it in his calendar like a countdown to freedom. That evening, Bennett Technologies held its quarterly all-hands meeting. 200 employees packed into the large conference room to hear updates on the acquisition, financial reports, strategic directions for the coming months. Daniel sat in the back with his new team, trying to focus on Thomas's presentation about infrastructure investments. But his eyes kept drifting to the front of the room where Olivia stood, commanding attention in a navy suit, speaking about quarterly results with the confidence that had first intimidated him. Now he knew what existed behind that confidence. The doubt she never showed in public, the loneliness of leadership, the way she looked in sweatpants eating mac and cheese with his daughter. The meeting ended with the usual mixer, wine and beer and small talk in the lobby. Daniel navigated through clusters of colleagues, accepting congratulations on his promotion, deflecting questions about his relationship with Olivia. He was talking to a project manager about timeline coordination when he felt rather than saw Olivia approach. Mr. Harper, she said formally, could I steal you for a moment? I have some questions about the infrastructure timeline. Of course, Ms. Bennett. They walked toward a quieter corner of the lobby, maintaining professional distance. But when they stopped, Olivia turned to face him with a small smile. So, she said quietly, just for him. It's been 30 days. I noticed. Company policy says we can be public now. No more hiding. What did you have in mind? Olivia glanced around the crowded lobby at all their colleagues drinking wine and networking and gossiping. Then she looked back at Daniel with an expression that was part challenge, part invitation. Something honest, she said. Before Daniel could ask what she meant, Olivia reached out and took his hand. The gesture was small, almost casual, just her fingers lacing through his, her palm warm against his skin. But in that crowded lobby full of Bennett Technologies employees, it was a declaration. Conversation around them stuttered and stopped. Daniel felt eyes turning their direction, felt the weight of attention and judgment and curiosity. Is this okay? Olivia asked quietly, squeezing his hand. Daniel looked at her, this brilliant, complicated woman who'd somehow decided he was worth the risk, and felt certainty settle over him like a blanket. It's perfect, he said. The whispers started immediately, rippling through the crowd like wind through grass. Daniel could imagine what people were saying, what conclusions they were drawing. Some would be kind. Others wouldn't. He found he didn't care. Want to get out of here? Olivia asked. There's a new Vietnamese place on Hawthorne. Lily would probably like their pho. You want to have dinner with us? If that's okay. I finished early today. Thought maybe we could make it official. Daniel grinned. Let me pick up Lily from Mrs. Chen's. Meet you there in 20? It's a date. They walked out of the lobby together, hand in hand, while 200 employees watched and whispered and wondered. Daniel felt lighter than he had in months, like some weight he'd been carrying had finally been set down. In the parking lot, before they went to their separate cars, Olivia stopped him. Daniel? Yeah? I'm all in. I meant what I said. Whatever comes next, whatever complications we have to navigate, I'm in this completely. Daniel pulled her close, right there in the Bennett Technologies parking lot where anyone could see, and kissed her properly for the first time. Olivia melted against him, her hands coming up to rest against his chest, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. Her lips, her warmth, the feeling of finally being able to stop hiding. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. I'm all in too, he said. You, me, and Lily. That's my future. That's what I choose. Even though it's complicated? Especially because it's complicated. Easy things aren't worth having. Olivia laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. When did you get so wise? A very smart CEO taught me to stop living halfway. They drove separately to the Vietnamese restaurant, but when Daniel arrived with Lily bouncing beside him, Olivia was already waiting. She'd saved them a booth by the window, and when Lily spotted her, she broke free of Daniel's hand and ran over. Ms. Olivia, Daddy said you're having dinner with us. I am. Is that okay with you? Lily considered this seriously. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? The question hung in the air. Daniel froze, suddenly unsure how to navigate this conversation. They'd agreed to take things slow with Lily, to not label anything until they were certain, but Olivia just smiled and said gently, I'd like to be, if that's okay with you. Lily studied her for a long moment with the intense scrutiny only children can manage. Then she nodded decisively. Okay, but you have to like dinosaurs, that's the rule. I'm learning, Olivia said seriously. But I might need you to teach me more. I can do that. I'm a very good teacher. They had dinner together, the three of them, a ready-made family that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Lily talked non-stop, Olivia listened with genuine interest, and Daniel felt pieces of his life finally clicking into place. This was what he'd been afraid to want. This feeling of completeness, of possibility, of being seen and understood and chosen anyway. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges ahead, work complications, relationship growing pains, the difficulty of blending lives and schedules and expectations. But sitting in that booth watching his daughter explain dinosaur evolution to the woman he was falling in love with, Daniel realized something fundamental. Some things were worth fighting for. Some people were worth the risk. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, a stormy night and a simple offer of shelter could change absolutely everything. The first month of their public relationship felt like walking a tightrope. Not because of Olivia or Lily. Those parts worked with surprising ease. But because the world of Bennett Technologies was watching their every move with the intensity of spectators at a car crash. Daniel felt it in the way conversation stopped when he entered break rooms, in the sideways glances during meetings, in the careful, overly formal way his new team members addressed him, as if afraid that too much friendliness might be mistaken for favoritism. They'll get used to it, Olivia said one evening. They were at her house, Lily asleep upstairs in what had gradually become her room at Olivia's place. People always do. The novelty will wear off. When? Daniel asked, frustrated. Because right now I feel like I'm under a microscope. Everything I do gets scrutinized. If I make a good decision, people say you're feeding me information. If I make a mistake, they say I only got promoted because we're together. I know it's hard. Do you? The words came out sharper than Daniel intended. Because from where I'm sitting, you're still the untouchable CEO. I'm the junior engineer who's sleeping with the boss. Olivia flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You hold all the power here, Olivia. Your reputation stays intact no matter what happens. Mine is the one that gets shredded. The silence between them was brittle and painful. Olivia set down her wineglass with careful precision. You're right, she said finally. I do hold more power. That's the reality of our positions. But Daniel, I'm risking things too. The board questions my judgment. Shareholders worry I'm distracted. I had a 20-minute lecture from our lead investor about maintaining professional objectivity. But at the end of the day, you're still the CEO. I'm still the guy who got promoted right before we went public. The math looks bad no matter how we spin it. Then what do you want to do? Olivia's voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Do you want to quit? Transfer to another company? End this before it gets more complicated? The question hung between them like a challenge. Daniel thought about all the reasons ending this would be easier. About protecting his reputation and advancing his career without the shadow of nepotism. About giving Lily a life that wasn't complicated by her father's relationship with his boss. Then he thought about Olivia teaching Lily to make pasta from scratch last weekend. About the way she laughed at his terrible jokes. About waking up next to her on Saturday mornings and feeling, for the first time in years, like he wasn't facing the world alone. No, Daniel said quietly. I don't want any of that. I'm just tired of defending something that shouldn't need defending. Olivia crossed the space between them and took his hands. I know, I'm tired too. But Daniel, we chose this. We knew it would be hard. We can't give up the first time it actually gets difficult. I'm not giving up. I just wish it was easier. Easy isn't real. Easy is what you have before anything matters. She squeezed his hands. This matters. You matter. That's worth some discomfort. Daniel pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I'm sorry I snapped at you. I'm sorry you're carrying the brunt of the judgment. That's not fair either. They held each other in the quiet of Olivia's living room, the house settling around them with small creaks and sighs. Upstairs, Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the adult complications swirling beneath the surface of her expanding world. We'll get through this, Olivia murmured against his chest. Together. Together, Daniel echoed, and tried to believe it. The breaking point came 6 weeks later, during a company-wide strategy meeting. Daniel was presenting the infrastructure modernization roadmap to the executive team, a presentation he'd spent 2 weeks preparing with input from his entire team and validation from 3 separate stakeholders. He was confident in the work, proud of what they'd accomplished. 15 minutes into his presentation, Martin Wheeler, the VP of Operations, interrupted. This timeline seems aggressive, Martin said, his tone dripping with skepticism. Are you certain your team can deliver on these milestones? Yes, Daniel replied evenly. We've built in buffer time and validated our estimates with the engineering leads. Interesting. Martin leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. And did you run this timeline past Ms. Bennett before presenting it to us? The room went very quiet. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. I ran it past Mr. Bradford, my direct supervisor, as well as the Infrastructure Planning Committee, the same approval process everyone follows. Of course, just curious if there were any informal consultations, given your unique relationship with our CEO. The implication was clear. Daniel felt heat rising up his neck, fury and humiliation warring in his chest. Across the conference table, he could see Olivia's face, carefully neutral, but her eyes blazing. My relationship with Ms. Bennett is disclosed to HR and properly managed, Daniel said, keeping his voice level through sheer force of will. It has no bearing on my work or this presentation. If you have concerns about the technical merits of this roadmap, I'm happy to address them, but questioning my professional integrity is out of line. Martin smiled thinly. No offense intended, just doing my due diligence. Then do your due diligence on the actual work, Daniel shot back. Question my data, challenge my assumptions, ask about risk mitigation, but don't question whether I earned the right to be in this room. The tension was suffocating. Thomas Bradford cleared his throat uncomfortably. Rachel Kim was taking very focused notes, and Olivia sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the table, radiating controlled fury. Gentlemen, Olivia said, her voice cutting through the thick silence like a blade. Mr. Harper has presented a comprehensive roadmap that aligns with our strategic objectives. If anyone has technical concerns, voice them now. Otherwise, let's move forward. No one spoke. Martin's smile had disappeared, replaced by something harder. No concerns, he said finally. Technically, it's solid work. The meeting continued, but Daniel barely heard the rest. He went through the motions of presenting, answering questions, defending his positions, but inside he was shaking with anger and something that felt uncomfortably close to shame. After the meeting ended, Daniel gathered his materials quickly, wanting to escape before anyone could offer sympathy, or worse, agreement with Martin's implications. He was almost to the elevator when Olivia's voice stopped him. My office. Now. It wasn't a request. Daniel followed her to the executive floor, acutely aware of curious eyes tracking their movement. Olivia's assistant took one look at her face and decided to take an early lunch. The moment Olivia's office door closed, her professional mask cracked. I'm sorry, she said immediately. Martin was completely out of line. I should have shut that down faster. You did shut it down. Not fast enough. He had no right to question you like that in front of the executive team. Daniel set down his laptop bag and sank into one of her chairs. He said what everyone's thinking, that I'm only here because we're together, that my work doesn't matter because you're pulling strings behind the scenes. That's not true, isn't it? Be honest with me, Olivia. Would I have gotten this promotion if we weren't involved? Yes. Her answer was immediate and firm. Daniel, you were on the short list before we ever had that conversation in the bakery. Your work spoke for itself. The only thing our relationship changed was the timeline. But you can't prove that. No one can. There will always be doubt. Olivia moved around her desk to stand in front of him. You're right. There will always be people like Martin who question your accomplishments, who assume the worst because it fits their narrative. But you can't let them define you. How do I not? When every success gets attributed to you instead of my actual work. By continuing to do excellent work, by proving them wrong every single day, by refusing to shrink yourself to make other people comfortable. She paused. And by deciding whether this is worth fighting for. Daniel looked up at her. Is that what we're doing? Fighting. Aren't we? Olivia's voice was soft but steady. Fighting against assumptions, against unfair perceptions, against people who want to diminish what we have. That's what this is, Daniel. A fight to exist in a world that doesn't make space for relationships like ours. I'm tired of fighting. I know. Me too. She sat down in the chair beside him, abandoning the CEO persona entirely. But here's what I know. That presentation was brilliant. Your roadmap is going to save this company millions and position us for long-term growth. You earned that. Martin's pettiness doesn't change the quality of your work. It changes how people see it. Only if you let it. Olivia reached over and took his hand. Daniel, I can't fix this. I can't make people stop judging us or questioning your merit. The only thing I can do is tell you what I know to be true. You're talented. You're dedicated. You deserve everything you've achieved, and anyone who thinks otherwise is wrong. Daniel closed his eyes, letting her words sink in. What if it doesn't get better? What if this is just how it is now? Then we decide if we're strong enough to live with it, together. The word hung between them, weighted with promise and challenge and choice. I don't want to lose you, Daniel said quietly. But I don't know how to keep doing this if it means constantly defending my right to exist in the same professional space as you. We could leave, Olivia said suddenly. Daniel's eyes snapped open. What? Leave Bennett Technologies. Both of us. Start something new where no one knows us, where we don't have this history weighing us down. Olivia, you built this company. You can't just walk away. Can't I? I've been CEO for 6 years, Daniel. I've taken this company public, navigated an acquisition, built something I'm proud of. Maybe it's time for a new chapter. You're not serious. I'm completely serious. Her eyes were bright with something that looked like possibility. What if we did it? What if we said, screw the optics and the judgment and the constant scrutiny and just built something new? Something that's ours from the start? The idea was insane. Reckless. The kind of thing people fantasized about but never actually did. And yet, sitting in Olivia's office with her hand in his, Daniel felt something stir in his chest. Not fear, but something closer to hope. What would we do? He asked, not quite believing they were having this conversation. I don't know. Maybe a tech startup focused on infrastructure solutions. You know the technical side better than anyone, and I know how to scale companies. We'd make a good team. We'd be starting from scratch. No guaranteed income, no stability. I have Lily to think about. I know, which is why this is just a thought, not a plan. But Daniel, watching you present today, watching Martin try to diminish your work because of his own insecurities, I realized something. I don't want to be part of a system that does this to good people, that punishes them for being human. Daniel thought about his daughter, about the stability he'd fought so hard to give her, about the risks of leaving a guaranteed paycheck for the uncertainty of entrepreneurship. Then he thought about spending the next decade defending his accomplishments, constantly proving he wasn't just the CEO's boyfriend, watching every word and action for fear of confirming people's worst assumptions. Let's think about it, he said finally. Not make any rash decisions, but actually think about what it would mean to walk away. Olivia smiled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Okay, we'll think about it. In the meantime, I need to go back to my team and pretend that meeting didn't completely shake my confidence. Your team believes in you, Daniel. I've heard them talk about you when they don't know I'm listening. They respect you. Then I'll try to live up to that respect. He stood to leave, but Olivia caught his hand. Daniel, thank you. For what? For not giving up, for staying even when it's hard, for choosing us. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for being worth it. The conversation with Olivia planted a seed that grew with unexpected speed. That evening, Daniel found himself researching startup costs and business plans instead of reviewing infrastructure specs. By the end of the week, he'd sketched out preliminary ideas for a company focused on helping mid-sized businesses modernize their technical infrastructure. He didn't tell Olivia about his research. Not yet. The idea still felt too fragile, too audacious to speak aloud. But the seed continued to grow. Then, 3 weeks after the disastrous strategy meeting, Martin Wheeler made his next move. It started with an email to the board of directors, CCing the entire executive team. The subject line read, "Concerns regarding leadership objectivity and conflict of interest." Daniel only saw the email because Thomas Bradford forwarded it to him with a terse message, "We need to talk." The email was a masterclass in corporate passive aggression. Martin carefully avoided direct accusations, instead raising questions about recent promotion decisions, concerns about the appearance of favoritism, and suggestions that the board review all personnel decisions made in the past 6 months to ensure proper protocols were followed. The implications were clear. Martin was questioning Daniel's promotion, Olivia's judgment, and the integrity of the entire HR process. Daniel read the email 3 times, each pass making his blood run colder. "What do we do?" he asked Thomas, sitting in the CFO's office an hour later. Thomas sighed heavily. "Honestly, we weather it. The board will conduct a review to cover their bases, but you were promoted through proper channels. HR has documentation of the entire process. Martin's fishing for something that isn't there. But the damage is done. Everyone's going to be talking about this." "They were already talking," Thomas pointed out. "This just makes it official. Look, Daniel, I've known Martin for 10 years. He's ambitious and he's ruthless. He sees your relationship with Olivia as a weakness he can exploit. Don't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. How do I not react when he's questioning my entire career? By doing your job so well that his complaints look petty in comparison." Thomas leaned forward. "You've been leading your team for 2 months. Your projects are on schedule, your people respect you, and your technical work is solid. Let that speak for itself." Daniel wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that merit would win out over politics and innuendo. But he'd been in the corporate world long enough to know better. The board review took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of formal interviews, documentation reviews, and tense waiting. Daniel was questioned about his qualifications, his relationship timeline with Olivia, his knowledge of company policies. Rachel Kim walked him through everything multiple times, assuring him it was standard procedure. It felt anything but standard. Olivia was questioned even more extensively. Daniel only saw her in passing during those 2 weeks, both of them maintaining careful professional distance while the board examined every aspect of their relationship. The stress was brutal. Daniel found himself snapping at Lily over small things, apologizing immediately but unable to control the anxiety leaking into every part of his life. Mrs. Chen noticed, offering to take Lily more often, but Daniel refused. His daughter was the one pure, uncomplicated thing in his life right now. He needed her. Finally, on a gray Wednesday afternoon, Thomas called him into his office. "The board completed their review," Thomas said without preamble. "The conclusion is that all proper protocols were followed. Your promotion was merit-based and approved through appropriate channels. There's no evidence of favoritism or policy violations." Relief flooded through Daniel so intensely he felt dizzy. "So I'm cleared?" "Officially, yes. The board is issuing a statement affirming the integrity of our HR processes and your qualifications for the role." "That's good, right?" Thomas's expression was carefully neutral. "It's good that you're cleared, but Daniel, there's more. Martin didn't take the news well. He's making noise about Olivia's leadership, suggesting the board should consider succession planning. He's trying to push her out. He's testing the waters, seeing if the board will lose confidence in her judgment. So far they're standing firm, but this isn't over." Daniel felt sick. "This is my fault. If we hadn't gone public, this is Martin's fault," Thomas interrupted firmly. "He's using your relationship as ammunition, but the real issue is his own ambition. If it wasn't this, he'd find something else." "What do we do?" We keep our heads down and do excellent work, both of you. Prove every single day that you deserve your positions. It was the same advice everyone kept giving, and Daniel was tired of hearing it, tired of proving himself, tired of defending his right to exist in this space, tired of watching Olivia bear the weight of criticism that should never have been hers to carry. He left Thomas's office and went straight to Olivia's. She was standing at her window overlooking downtown Portland, her back to the door, shoulders rigid with tension. "I heard about the board's decision," Daniel said quietly. "Good news for you." Her voice was flat, exhausted. "Olivia, Martin's calling for my removal. Did Thomas tell you that part?" "He mentioned succession planning." Olivia laughed bitterly. Succession planning. Such a polite way to say they want me gone. The company I built, the team I assembled, the vision I've been executing for 6 years. Martin wants to take it all because I dared to have a personal life. The board won't let that happen. Won't they? She turned to face him, and Daniel's heart broke at the exhaustion in her eyes. "I've given everything to this company, Daniel. Everything. And now they're questioning whether I can be objective, whether my judgment can be trusted, whether I'm too distracted by personal relationships to lead effectively. You're the best CEO this company has ever had. That doesn't matter if the board loses confidence, if the shareholders start asking questions, if Martin convinces enough people that I'm a liability." Daniel crossed to her, taking her hands. "Then we leave. Like you said, both of us. We walk away and build something new." Olivia looked at him with something that might have been hope or might have been fear. "You're serious?" "I've been researching it for weeks. I have preliminary business plans, financial projections, a list of potential clients. We could do this, Olivia. We could actually do this." "That's insane." "So is staying here and fighting a battle we might not win. So is letting Martin Wheeler destroy what we've built together. What about Lily? About stability?" "I'll figure it out. I always do. But I can't watch you sacrifice yourself for a company that doesn't appreciate you, and I can't keep proving I'm worthy of a position I've already earned." Olivia closed her eyes, tears finally escaping down her cheeks. "I'm so tired, Daniel." "I know. Me too." They stood together in her office, holding each other while the city sprawled below them, and the future loomed uncertain and terrifying and somehow still full of possibility. "If we do this," Olivia said finally, voice muffled against his shoulder, "we do it right. Proper notice, no burning bridges, clean exit." "Obviously. And we need a solid business plan. Real funding, real clients, a real path to profitability." "I've been working on it." She pulled back to look at him. "Show me." They spent the next 3 hours in Olivia's office, door locked, phone silenced, poring over Daniel's research and sketches. They debated market opportunities, potential clients, funding strategies. Olivia's business acumen combined with Daniel's technical expertise created something that looked less like a fantasy and more like a genuine possibility. "We'd need at least 6 months of runway," Olivia said, scribbling notes. "Probably more. The first year would be brutal." "I know. And there's no guarantee we'd succeed. Most startups fail in the first 2 years." "I know that too. But if we did succeed," Olivia looked up at him, and for the first time in weeks, Daniel saw hope in her eyes. "If we built something that was truly ours, without the politics and the judgment and the constant scrutiny, it would be worth it," Daniel finished. They talked until the cleaning crew arrived, then reluctantly packed up to continue the conversation at Olivia's house. Daniel picked up Lily from Mrs. Chen's, and by the time they arrived, Olivia had pizza waiting. "Are we having a sleepover?" Lily asked excitedly. "Looks like it," Daniel said, glancing at Olivia for confirmation. "Always room for you here," Olivia said, ruffling Lily's hair affectionately. After dinner and bedtime stories and tucking Lily in upstairs, Daniel and Olivia returned to their business planning. They worked late into the night, the dream taking clearer shape with every passing hour. Around midnight, Olivia set down her pen and looked at Daniel. "If we do this," she said, "if we really leave and start our own company, we have to be absolutely certain. There's no going back." "I know. It means walking away from guaranteed salaries, benefits, stability. It means risk and uncertainty, and probably some very lean months." "I understand the stakes." "Do you? Because this isn't just about us anymore, Daniel. Lily's future is part of this equation. If we fail, If the company doesn't make it, then we figure it out, Daniel interrupted gently. We find other jobs, we rebuild, we adapt. But Olivia, staying at Bennett Technologies means continuing to fight battles we shouldn't have to fight. It means years of defending ourselves, of watching our accomplishments get questioned, of letting people like Martin Wheeler control our narrative. And leaving means taking control of our own story. Exactly. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then she smiled, a real smile, the first genuine one Daniel had seen in weeks. Let's do it, she said. Let's build something amazing. They sealed the decision with a kiss that tasted like possibility and freedom and the terrifying beauty of choosing yourself over safety. Outside, Portland slept. Inside, two people who'd found each other on a stormy night months ago started planning the biggest risk of their lives, together. The decision made, the real work began. They gave themselves 3 months to build a foundation solid enough to launch from, 3 months of secret planning while maintaining their public roles at Bennett Technologies, 3 months of late nights and careful calculations and moments of sheer terror at what they were about to do. Daniel worked on the technical framework while Olivia focused on funding and client acquisition. They moved carefully, reaching out to contacts with strategic discretion, building relationships that would matter when they finally went public with their plans. The hardest part was keeping it secret from Lily. "Why are you and Olivia always working on the computer together?" she asked one Saturday morning, looking up from her cereal with those sharp 6-year-old eyes that saw more than adults wanted them to. "We're planning something special," Daniel said carefully. "A surprise project." What kind of project?" "The kind we can't talk about yet, but you'll be the first to know when we're ready, okay?" Lily considered this with the seriousness she applied to all important matters. "Okay, but it better be good. I don't like boring grown-up surprises." "It won't be boring," Olivia promised, reaching over to steal a piece of Lily's toast. "I guarantee it." 8 weeks into their planning, they had their first real setback. The venture capital firm Olivia had been courting pulled out of preliminary discussions, citing concerns about market saturation and competitive positioning. "That was our best funding option," Olivia said, pacing her living room while Daniel tried to salvage their financial projections. "Without them, we're looking at bootstrapping with personal savings and maybe a small business loan. That cuts our runway in half." Then we adjust the timeline. Launch smaller, scale slower. That's not how tech startups work, Daniel. We need to move fast or someone else will fill the niche we're targeting. So we find another investor. We've already approached everyone I know who has that kind of capital. The ones who didn't outright refuse are taking a wait-and-see approach, which is code for no. Daniel set down his laptop and looked at her. Olivia had stopped pacing and stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself, shoulders tight with stress. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "I'm thinking maybe this is a sign. Maybe we're being reckless. Maybe walking away from guaranteed positions to start something from nothing with a 6-year-old depending on us is the definition of irresponsible parenting. Or maybe it's teaching her that sometimes you have to take risks for things that matter." That's easy to say when it's not your child's stability on the line. The words hit harder than Olivia probably intended. Daniel felt them like a physical blow. "She's not just your responsibility," Olivia continued, still staring out the window. "If this fails, if we can't make payroll or find clients or keep the lights on, Lily's the one who suffers, and I can't be the reason a little girl loses her security. Olivia, maybe you should do this without me. Take my business plan, my contacts, and launch it yourself. You could get funding easier without the baggage of my reputation, without people questioning whether the former CEO of Bennett Technologies is running from her failures." Daniel stood and crossed to her, gently turning her to face him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "First of all," he said firmly, "you're not baggage. You're the most capable business person I know. Second, I'm not doing this without you. That was never the plan." "Then what is the plan? Because right now I don't see how we make this work." "We bootstrap. We start smaller than we wanted, but we start. I have savings from my promotion. You have savings from 6 years of CEO salary. We combine resources, keep overhead minimal, and we hustle like hell to land our first few clients." "That's not a plan. That's a prayer." "No, a prayer is hoping something works out without doing anything. A plan is identifying what we need to succeed and going after it deliberately. Daniel took her hands. We need 3 things. First, a minimum viable product we can demo to potential clients. I can build that in 6 weeks. Second, we need initial clients willing to take a chance on us. You've been in this industry for a decade. You know people who trust your judgment. Third, we need to believe we can actually do this. I did believe, before the VC fell through. Then believe again. We've faced worse odds than this. Olivia searched his face, looking for certainty or foolishness or some combination of both. You really think we can pull this off? I think if we don't try, we'll spend the rest of our lives wondering what if, and I'd rather fail trying than succeed at something that makes us miserable. She leaned her forehead against his chest. When did you become the optimistic one? Right around the time you became the pessimistic one. We balance each other. Olivia laughed weakly. That's not how business partnerships work. Good thing this is more than a business partnership. They adjusted their plans, scaled back their projections, and threw themselves into building something they could launch with the resources they had. Daniel worked on the product while Olivia began careful conversations with former colleagues and industry contacts. The response was cautiously encouraging. Several mid-sized companies expressed interest in their services. 2 offered letters of intent contingent on seeing the finished product. It wasn't the flood of clients they'd hoped for, but it was enough to build momentum. 10 weeks into their planning, they finally told Thomas Bradford. You're doing what? Thomas stared at them across his desk like they'd announced plans to join the circus. Leaving to start our own company, Olivia repeated calmly. We wanted you to hear it from us before we submit formal notice to the board. This is insane. You're the CEO, Olivia. You built this company. And now it's time to build something else. Thomas turned to Daniel. And you? You're walking away from a senior position you fought to earn? I'm walking towards something better, Daniel said simply. Better? You're both throwing away guaranteed 6-figure salaries to start a company in a saturated market with no funding and no guarantee of success. When you put it like that, it does sound crazy, Olivia admitted with a slight smile. But Thomas, I've spent 6 years building Bennett Technologies into something I'm proud of. The acquisition is complete, the company is stable, and honestly, I'm ready for a new challenge. And Martin Wheeler has nothing to do with this decision? Martin is a symptom, not the cause. The cause is that I'm tired of defending my right to have a personal life. Tired of watching Daniel's accomplishments get diminished because of our relationship. Tired of playing by rules designed to keep people like us in predetermined boxes. Thomas was quiet for a long moment, then he sighed heavily. I can't talk you out of this, can I? No, they said in unison. Then I have one request. Give me 3 months' notice instead of the standard 2. Let me prepare the board, handle the transition properly. You owe the company that much. Olivia and Daniel exchanged glances. They'd planned for 2 months, but 3 would give them more time to solidify their client base and refine their product. 3 months, Olivia agreed. But we announce our intentions now. I won't spend 3 months pretending this isn't happening. Fair enough. Thomas stood and offered his hand. For what it's worth, I think you're both crazy. But I also think you might just pull this off. They shook hands, sealing a decision that would change everything. The announcement to the Bennett Technologies board went about as well as expected. Some members were supportive, others were bewildered. Martin Wheeler was furious, though he tried to hide it behind concern for company stability. This seems hasty, Martin said during the emergency board meeting called to discuss Olivia's resignation. Perhaps Ms. Bennett needs time to reconsider. The stress of leadership combined with personal complications can cloud judgment. My judgment is perfectly clear, Olivia replied coolly. I'm grateful for the opportunity to lead this company, but it's time for new leadership. I'll spend the next 3 months ensuring a smooth transition and preparing my successor. And who exactly will that successor be? That's for the board to decide. I'll provide my recommendations, but the choice is yours. Martin's eyes gleamed. Daniel could practically see him calculating his chances of ascending to CEO. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, the board had reluctantly accepted Olivia's resignation with an effective date 3 months out. They also accepted Daniel's resignation, though with considerably less ceremony. Walking out of that conference room felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. No turning back now, Daniel said as they rode the elevator down. Were you thinking about turning back? For about 30 seconds in there when Martin started talking about clouded judgment. Olivia smiled. Only 30 seconds? I had at least 2 full minutes of panic. What stopped it? Looking at you, remembering why we're doing this. They walked out of Bennett Technologies headquarters that evening knowing they'd return for 3 more months, but everything had fundamentally changed. They were no longer CEO and senior engineer. They were business partners preparing to launch something entirely their own. The news spread through the company within hours. Reactions ranged from shock to support to barely concealed glee from those who'd bet against them. Daniel's team took it hardest. "You're really leaving?" asked Jennifer, one of the engineers Daniel had mentored. "But we just got this team running smoothly." "I know, and you'll keep it running smoothly. You're more than capable. It won't be the same without you." Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's time for new voices, new leadership. You've been ready for more responsibility for months. Jennifer looked both terrified and excited. "You really think so?" "I know so." The next 3 months were a blur of transition planning, client meetings, product development, and increasingly difficult goodbyes. Daniel trained his replacement, documented all his projects, and tried to leave his team in the best possible position for success. Olivia worked even harder, preparing comprehensive transition materials, conducting extensive interviews for her replacement, and ensuring Bennett Technologies would thrive without her. Martin Wheeler launched one final attempt to undermine them, spreading rumors that they were stealing company intellectual property and poaching clients. Rachel Kim shut him down with a tersely worded memo, clarifying that both Olivia and Daniel had signed non-compete agreements and were complying with all legal and ethical requirements. "He's desperate," Thomas told Daniel over lunch during the final month. He thought Olivia leaving would clear his path to CEO. Instead, the board's bringing in an external candidate, someone with no ties to company politics. "Good," Daniel said. "This place needs fresh perspective." "You don't have any regrets?" Daniel thought about the question honestly. "I regret that it got ugly at the end, that people like Martin made it about us instead of about the work. But leaving? No. This feels right." Through it all, Lily remained blissfully unaware of the enormity of what was happening. She knew Daddy and Olivia were starting a new job, but the 6-year-old concept of career change didn't include the terror and excitement that kept Daniel awake most nights. 2 weeks before their final day at Bennett Technologies, they landed their first major client, a mid-sized healthcare company looking to modernize their infrastructure, willing to take a chance on a startup because they trusted Olivia's reputation and believed in Daniel's technical approach. "This is real," Olivia said, staring at the signed contract. "We have an actual client with actual money. This is really happening." "Are you surprised?" "Terrified is more accurate. But yes, a little surprised. Starting to believe we might actually pull this off." They celebrated that night with champagne and takeout, Lily drinking apple juice from a wine glass and declaring herself fancy. "When you're a little older," Olivia said, "we'll tell you about tonight, about the moment we knew everything was going to be okay." "I thought everything was already okay," Lily said, confused. Daniel smiled. "It is, sweetheart. It really is." Their final week at Bennett Technologies was bittersweet. Colleagues threw impromptu goodbye parties. Daniel's team presented him with a framed photo of the group along with personal notes from each member. The executive team held a formal farewell dinner where even Martin Wheeler managed polite congratulations, though his smile never reached his eyes. On their last day, Daniel packed up his desk for the final time. Photos of Lily, a coffee mug she'd decorated for Father's Day, the nameplate from his brief time as a senior engineer, a career contained in a single cardboard box. He was sealing the box when Olivia appeared at his desk. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." They walked out together, just as they'd walked out that first night during the storm. Except this time, they weren't running from anything. They were walking towards something they'd built together, something that was entirely theirs. The first 6 months of Harper Bennett Solutions tested them in ways they hadn't anticipated. The work itself was manageable. They were good at what they did, and their initial clients were pleased with the results. But the logistics of running a startup while raising a 6-year-old and maintaining a relationship proved brutally difficult. Money was tighter than Daniel had experienced since Lily's early years. They'd budgeted carefully, but unexpected expenses kept appearing. Equipment costs, software licenses, professional insurance, the endless small expenses that drained their runway faster than projected. "We have 4 months of savings left," Olivia said one night, reviewing their financials. "We need 2 more clients minimum to stay afloat. We have 3 proposals out. One of them will land. And if they don't, then we get creative, we adjust, we pivot, we figure it out." But the stress was taking its toll. Olivia was working 16-hour days, trying to manage business development, client relations, and administrative overhead. Daniel was juggling technical delivery with parenting responsibilities that didn't pause just because he was building a company. They snapped at each other over small things, forgot to communicate about important decisions, went days where their only conversations were about work, completely losing sight of the relationship that had started all of this. One evening, Daniel came home to find Olivia asleep at the kitchen table, laptop still open, half-eaten dinner cold beside her. Lily was in her room playing quietly, having learned not to disturb the grown-ups when they were working. Looking at Olivia's exhausted face and his daughter entertaining herself alone, Daniel realized they'd lost something essential. They'd been so focused on building a successful company that they'd forgotten why they started it in the first place. "Olivia." He gently shook her shoulder. "Wake up." She startled awake, immediately reaching for her laptop. "What time is it? Did the client call back?" "It's 7:30, and we need to talk." Something in his tone made her focus. "What's wrong?" "This. All of this. We're killing ourselves trying to build something that was supposed to make us happy, but look at us. You're falling asleep at the table. Lily's upstairs playing alone because she knows not to interrupt us. When's the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about work?" Olivia rubbed her face tiredly. "We're in the critical growth phase. This is temporary." "Is it?" "Because I've been telling myself that for 6 months, that once we land the next client, once we stabilize revenue, once we hire help, then things will get easier. But there's always another milestone, another crisis, another reason to put our lives on hold." "What do you want me to say, Daniel? That I'm exhausted? That I'm terrified we're going to fail? That I wake up every morning wondering if today's the day we run out of money?" "I want you to say that we're still in this together, that we remember why we started." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I remember every day. But remembering doesn't pay the bills or land clients or make this easier. Then we make it easier. We set boundaries. We hire part-time help even though it strains the budget. We have dinner together as a family at least 4 nights a week. We stop treating our relationship like it's the thing we'll get to after we build a successful company. Those boundaries could cost us everything we've worked for. And not having them is costing us everything that matters. Daniel took her hands. "Olivia, I didn't leave Bennett Technologies to work even harder than before. I left to build a life, not just a company. If we can't figure out how to do both, then what's the point?" The tears spilled over. Olivia didn't try to stop them. "I don't know how to stop. How to turn off the voice that says, if I'm not working, I'm failing. You learn. We learn together, starting tonight." He closed her laptop, set it aside, and pulled her to her feet. "What are we doing?" "Having dinner. The 3 of us. No work talk, no client emergencies unless the building is literally on fire. Just us being a family." They ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor with Lily, who was delighted by the unexpected break in routine. They played board games and watched a movie and laughed at Lily's running commentary on every scene. For 3 hours, they weren't startup founders or business partners. They were just people who loved each other, choosing to be present instead of productive. That night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel and Olivia sat on the back porch of the house they were renting. Smaller than Olivia's old place, but big enough for the 3 of them. "I'm sorry," Olivia said quietly, "for losing sight of what matters. We both did. This is hard in ways I didn't anticipate. But you were right, about boundaries, about priorities. We need to figure out how to build a company without destroying the life we wanted to build together." They made new rules after that conversation. Dinner together 4 nights a week, no exceptions. Sundays completely work-free, devoted to Lily and each other. Daily check-ins about feelings, not just business metrics. The changes helped, but they didn't solve the underlying problem. They were still running out of money, still struggling to land enough clients to sustain growth. Then, 9 months after launching, everything changed again. It started with an email from Jennifer, Daniel's former team member at Bennett Technologies. She'd been promoted to team lead after Daniel left and was now facing a complex infrastructure challenge that her current leadership couldn't solve. "I know you're probably busy with your company," her email read, "but I'm desperate. We have a legacy system that needs migration before end of quarter, and everyone I've talked to either can't do it or wants to charge twice our budget. Any chance Harper Bennett Solutions would be interested?" Daniel showed the email to Olivia. "It's a small project, maybe 6 weeks of work, but it's Bennett Technologies. Your old company, where we both left under complicated circumstances." "Exactly. It could be weird. Or it could be an opportunity to prove we're professionals who deliver quality work regardless of history." Olivia smiled. "Besides, we need the revenue. And wouldn't it be poetic, the company that questioned our relationship becoming our client?" They bid on the project with a fair price and a detailed technical approach. 3 days later, Jennifer called with the news that they'd won the contract. The project was challenging but manageable. Daniel led the technical work while Olivia managed client relations. They delivered 2 weeks ahead of schedule and under budget, solving problems that Bennett Technologies' internal team hadn't been able to crack. The success led to more work. Jennifer recommended them to other teams. Word spread about the former CEO and senior engineer who'd left to start their own company and were now delivering exceptional results. Within 6 months, Bennett Technologies became one of their largest clients. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. "I heard Martin Wheeler nearly had an aneurysm when the board approved contracting with us," Thomas told Daniel during a project meeting. "He argued it was a conflict of interest, but the numbers don't lie. You're saving the company millions." "How's the new CEO working out?" "Brilliant hire. None of the ego, all of the competence. She's cleaning up a lot of the political mess Martin created." "And Martin?" Thomas smiled grimly. "Let's just say his future at Bennett Technologies is looking uncertain." The poetic justice felt good, but what felt better was the validation. They'd taken an enormous risk, faced brutal criticism, and emerged with a successful company built on their own terms. Harper Bennett Solutions grew steadily over the next year. They hired their first employees, 2 talented engineers who believed in their vision. They moved into a small office space. They landed contracts with companies across 3 states. More importantly, they figured out how to balance ambition with life, how to build something meaningful without sacrificing everything else that mattered. 18 months after leaving Bennett Technologies, on a rainy Saturday morning that reminded Daniel of a different storm long ago, he and Olivia stood in their kitchen making breakfast while Lily did homework at the table. "You know what today is?" Olivia asked, cracking eggs into a bowl. "Saturday?" "The anniversary of that first night, when you gave me a ride home during the storm." Daniel paused, counting back. "Has it really been 2 years?" "Almost exactly," Olivia smiled. 2 years since you said you wouldn't sleep on the sofa and accidentally started all of this." "Best awkward comment I ever made." "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Daniel thought about everything they'd been through. The judgment and the rumors and the brutal board review. The terrifying decision to leave stable careers. The stress and uncertainty of building a company from nothing. The fights and exhaustion and moments of doubt. Then he thought about Saturday morning breakfasts and Lily's laughter and building something that was truly theirs. About Olivia falling asleep on his shoulder during movies and the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention. About the life they'd constructed together through choice and effort and refusing to settle for halfway. "Not for a second," he said. Lily looked up from her homework. "Are you guys being mushy again?" "Absolutely," Olivia said. "Deal with it." "Gross." But Lily was smiling. Later that morning, after breakfast was cleaned up and Lily was absorbed in a book, Daniel found Olivia in their home office reviewing contracts. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." He led her to the living room where rain pelted against the windows in sheets, the storm as fierce as the one that had brought them together 2 years ago. "What am I looking at?" Olivia asked. "This." Daniel gestured to the window, to the storm, to the room where they stood. 2 years ago, a storm changed my life. I gave you a ride home, you invited me to wait it out, and I made an awkward comment about your sofa. "I remember. What's your point?" My point is that you asked if I regretted any of it, and I said no. But that's not quite true. Olivia's expression shifted to concern. Daniel, I regret that we had to fight so hard for this, that people made us prove we deserved each other, that starting something real cost us both careers we'd worked for. He took her hands. But I don't regret a single choice I made that led me here, to this moment, this life, this family. We did fight hard, Olivia agreed softly. Harder than we should have had to. But we won. We built something that matters. We created a life that's ours on our own terms, and we did it by refusing to live halfway. Olivia's eyes were bright with emotion. You remember that? You told me that first night was when you knew I was different, that it wasn't about the sofa, it was about refusing to settle. That stuck with me. It's how I've tried to live ever since. And look where it got us. Exactly where we're supposed to be. They stood together watching the storm, just as they had 2 years ago in Olivia's old house. But everything was different now. They weren't boss and employee, weren't navigating impossible complications or hiding from judgment. They were partners. In business, in life, in raising Lily, in building a future neither had imagined possible. I love you, Olivia said suddenly. I don't think I say it enough, but I love you, Daniel Harper. I love your terrible jokes and your dedication to being a good father. I love how you believe in people even when they don't believe in themselves. I love that you saw me, really saw me, when I was just a stranded CEO in a storm. I love you too, Daniel said, pulling her close. I love your brilliance and your determination. I love watching you teach Lily how to cook and hearing you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love that you took a chance on someone who had no business being in your world. You had every business being in my world. You just didn't know it yet. They kissed while rain drummed against the windows and thunder rumbled in the distance, the storm wrapping around them like a mem peori and a promise all at once. Upstairs they heard Lily moving around, probably about to demand attention or snacks or help with some new dinosaur discovery. Reality calls, Olivia said, pulling back slightly. Let it call. I'm exactly where I want to be. In the living room during a storm, with you. Building this life, choosing us every single day. Olivia smiled, and in that smile Daniel saw their past and their future and the extraordinary gift of being seen and chosen and loved completely. The storm would pass, as storms always did. The company would face new challenges, because growth always brought complications. There would be difficult days and hard decisions and moments when they questioned their choices. But they would face all of it together, the way they'd faced everything else, with honesty and effort and the understanding that anything worth having was worth fighting for. 2 years ago, Daniel had offered a ride to a stranded CEO during a storm. He'd made an awkward comment about a sofa that somehow became the beginning of everything that mattered. He'd said he wouldn't sleep on the sofa, wouldn't settle for halfway, wouldn't accept less than what he deserved. And in refusing to live halfway, he'd found a life more whole and real and beautiful than he'd ever imagined possible. That was the truth of it. Not the storm or the struggle or the success, but the simple courage to choose completely, to love fully, to build something real despite every obstacle and doubt and fear. The rain continued to fall, washing Portland clean, and inside their home, surrounded by evidence of the life they'd built together, Daniel Harper held the woman he loved and knew with absolute certainty that every risk had been worth it, every single one.